The old man's cane slipped as the words struck him like a blow. He had to leave. 93 years old, shoulders bent by time but posture still marked by discipline, he stood frozen in the center of a crowded diner. The manager's voice, sharp and dismissive, cut through the chatter as though the man were an inconvenience, not a human being. His thin fingers gripped the table's edge for balance. His plate barely touched. Around him, conversations faltered, eyes turned away. No one rose, no one spoke. The air was heavy with that dangerous silence. The kind that grows when everyone feels the sting of wrongness but fears stepping into it. The man's name was Henry Marshall. His face was lined with the years, his skin weathered like parchment, but his eyes were the piercing blue of someone who had once stood watch in storms at sea. His jacket, too large for his frame, bore a patch half hidden by frayed fabric, a remnant of a uniform long retired. He did not argue. He did not beg. He simply tried to steady himself, gathering what remained of his dignity as he prepared to shuffle away. His silence spoke volumes, though none dared to interpret it aloud. Yet at a corner booth, 3 men had already risen. They were younger, broad-shouldered, with the calm awareness of those who had lived through battle. They had entered unnoticed, their presence quiet, almost ordinary. But as Henry reached for his cane, their movements shifted the atmosphere. Their gazes locked on the scene unfolding, jaws clenched. To most, they were strangers. To each other, they were brothers, forged not by blood but by grueling years of training. Navy SEAL. And though the world did not know their names, they had learned long ago when silence was a shield, and when it became betrayal. Henry's steps were unsteady. The manager crossed his arms, impatience radiating from every line of his body. He wanted compliance, not confrontation. The elderly man's shoes scraped against the linoleum as he made for the door, carrying not just his weight, but the sting of public dismissal. Henry Marshall had once been the very image of resilience. At 18, he had lied about his age to enlist. The war had called, and he had answered, not with bravado, but with a sense of duty woven into every fiber of his being. He remembered the first salt sting of the ocean on a grey morning as destroyers lined the harbor. The steel decks had burned beneath the sun, the air thick with the smell of oil and sweat, the sharp bite of Russian coffee the only comfort before deployment. He had sailed into battles that history would record in blood and sacrifice. Friends had fallen beside him, young men who never saw their 21st birthdays. He had carried their memories through the decades, each wrinkle on his face a reminder that he had lived while others had not. After the war, he built a quiet life. He married once, buried a wife too soon. He raised children who moved away, grandchildren who visited less with every passing year. The world changed fast and loud while Henry slowed, his strength fading like a song carried off by wind. Yet his pride endured. He never demanded respect. He carried himself in silence, expecting nothing but deserving everything. And now, at 93, that silence was tested as he was told he did not belong. The 3 SEAL watched as Henry's back turned toward the door. The oldest of them, scars hidden beneath his sleeves, felt his pulse quicken with anger. The youngest, still haunted by recent deployments, clenched his fists beneath the table. The third, calmest by nature, rose without a word. The others followed. Their boots struck the floor in quiet unison, each step deliberate, echoing through the diner until even the manager's posture stiffened. They reached Henry before he reached the door. One of them, tall and broad, gently took the cane from his trembling hand and steadied him with a grip that was firm but respectful. Another gathered the old man's untouched plate and set it back on the table. The third turned to face the manager. Eyes locked, expression unflinching. Henry blinked, confused at first, then realized the weight of their presence. He had seen that look before, the look of men trained to stand when others falter. His lips trembled, but he did not speak. The manager shifted uneasily, muttering something about policy, about rules, about not being able to serve someone who lingered too long without ordering more. His words tumbled out, hollow and defensive, but in the silence of the SEAL, his authority began to crumble. They did not argue. They did not raise their voices. They simply stood, forming an unspoken wall of defense around the old man. The crowd, which had pretended not to notice before, now leaned in. Phones appeared, discreetly at first, then boldly. The injustice could no longer be ignored. The seal's quiet defiance forced everyone to confront what they had turned away from only moments earlier. The tension thickened. The manager's face flushed. He insisted they leave if they would not comply. For a heartbeat, it seemed the confrontation might erupt. Yet Henry remained calm, his silence steadier now, as though the strength of these three strangers had lent him back the dignity momentarily stripped away. Then came the shift. The seal who held Henry's cane placed it gently back in his hand, then turned to the manager and spoke only one sentence. "This man earned his seat before you were ever born." The words struck harder than a shout. They resonated, not because of volume, but because of truth. The weight of sacrifice, of history, of unspoken respect filled the space between them. The manager faltered, his mouth opening then closing, the bravado drained from him. The oldest seal slid into a booth with Henry, motioning for him to sit. The other two flanked him, not protectively but honorably, as if guarding a commander. The waitress, emboldened by their presence, stepped forward and poured Henry a fresh cup of coffee, her hand steady now, her eyes soft with recognition. She asked what he wanted to eat. For the first time that day, Henry smiled faintly. The diners, one by one, began to applaud. Not loud at first, but growing, until the room filled with the sound. It was not for the seal, not even for the confrontation, but for the man who had walked into a diner forgotten by many and left remembered by all. Henry's silence had become his greatest strength. It drew out the courage in others, revealed the measure of men who refused to let dignity be discarded. He leaned back against the booth, coffee warming his hands, eyes glistening not with weakness but with gratitude. Later the footage spread, a frail old veteran told to leave, shielded by three Navy SEAL who had seen enough of disrespect to know when to act. The image became iconic, Henry sitting between them, a king restored to his throne, while the crowd stood witness. Henry spoke only once more that day, words that would ripple far beyond the walls of the diner. Respect is the only meal that never grows cold. The seal nodded, their silence agreement enough. And as Henry finished his breakfast, the crowd around him learned a truth often forgotten. That honor is not owed to the powerful, but to those who carried the weight of sacrifice before us all. The story lingers because it is more than a single act of defiance. It is a reminder that strength does not always shout. Sometimes it simply stands. Sometimes it holds a cane for a man who once held a rifle. Sometimes it refuses to move until dignity is restored. So to you watching now, where are you standing in life's diner? When silence meets injustice, would you look away or would you rise? Share your thoughts. Tell us where you are watching from. And if Henry's story moved you, join us by subscribing so more stories of quiet heroes can be told. Because in the end, the loudest echo in history is often the silence of dignity that refuses to break.